In my career, I was very active in entertainment, marketing, and sponsorships. So I had the opportunity to meet and interact with many, many celebrities from sports, politics, music, movies, TV, and business. And what I tell people all the time, if you really, really like a celebrity, don't meet them. Because far more likely than not, you will be disappointed. Hello again. Welcome to The Ruthless Truth. I am your host, Truth Davis. In this forum, I share opinions, thoughts, truths on a wide variety of topics based on what I consider to be a unique life experience. I'm an inner city kid who ascended to the C-suite of a Fortune 100 company, so I've seen some things. You can read the details in the notes or in the bio. My intent is to share stories and hopefully provide some life and career lessons that will help you on your life journey. Please follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5, subscribe to the YouTube channel Ruthless Truth, and there's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. General format, I'll share some initial commentary on current news or just my thoughts. Then I'll have a deeper discussion on one topic, which will be today's truth. And then I like to finish with an American history fun fact. Okay, I guess I can't ignore the biggest recent news story, the shooting at last week's White House Correspondents' Dinner. Now, I won't address the incident itself, but more of the post-incident rhetoric. I've said many times that I am never shocked by anything the president says or does. Well, this is no longer true, because when the president reemerged after the threat had passed, as part of his remarks, he called on Americans to, quote, recommit with their hearts and resolve their differences peacefully, end quote. Wow. That's a tone I've never seen him strike. Looking to diffuse rather than inflame. God, I wish we could get more of that from him. Now, of course, afterwards, he returned to form, using the incident as an opportunity to pitch the need for his much desired White House ballroom. And later, the press secretary blamed political violence in the country on rhetoric from the Democrats. I think we all know that there is hateful and divisive rhetoric spewing from both sides. But she is right on one point. Political violence incidents are currently at a 30-year high. And for the first time, more of the recent events have come from the left, with 10 recent incidents as compared to 8 instigated by right-leaning individuals. My hope and prayer is that the president, as well as all political leaders, continue to turn down the rhetoric and encourage their constituencies to do the same. It's only been in the last 15 years that disputes have turned so volatile. We can turn back the clock on this. Okay, that's enough about politics. How about some entertainment news? So, the long-awaited and much-anticipated biopic of Michael Jackson, simply titled Michael, opened this past weekend to huge box office numbers. Specifically, the film generated over $97 million in domestic revenue and an additional $118 million internationally, for a worldwide total of $219 million. This is the most successful opening ever for a biopic, surpassing the previous record holder, Oppenheimer. Now, these results are even more impressive when you consider movie critics bashed the film and it only received a 40% rating from critics on Rotten Tomatoes, which puts it among the worst reviewed biopics of the last few years. However, the audience score was 97%, and the gap between the audience and the critics is one of the largest of all time. The movie did well across all age groups, with those 55 years and older making up 15% of the audience. Typically, this age group comprises less than 7% of moviegoers. Movie critics are surprised by the popularity of the film and the record box office. I'm like, really? I'm not. I'm not surprised at all. For a few reasons. First, given the malaise that hangs over the nation, it's understandable that people would look for some light, fun escapism. Next, critics still don't understand that there is a big difference between a good movie and an entertaining one. My favorite example is Purple Rain. Not a good movie, okay? Meaning storyline, acting, character development, directing. It was an awful movie, actually. Most of the cast didn't even have a SAG card, meaning they had zero acting experience. But was it entertaining? Absolutely. I loved it because the musical performances were great. And by all accounts, including the critics that panned the movie, Jafar Jackson's performance as Michael was sensational. I'm glad a good time was had by all. Okay, the other hot entertainment news was the announcement by Megan Thee Stallion that she was ending her relationship with NBA player Klay Thompson, who she accused of cheating on her. Now, I must admit, I am somewhat surprised by the volume of reactions to this story. And there are basically two camps here, and each camp is comprised of men and women. Camp 1 laments, Klay, how could you? How could you fumble an opportunity with such a queen? These people are not only mad at Klay, but there have also been threats made. The second camp, here's what they're saying. Well, what'd you expect? He's a professional athlete. Before I comment, let me disclose that the Golden State Warriors are my favorite team, and Klay Thompson is one of my favorite players. That said, my take? I questioned the relationship from the beginning. While they were both rich, famous, and good-looking people, their personas were quite different. I never expected it to last a year. But I guess what I would say to both camps, none of us know the complete story. Here's what you must remember when it comes to celebrities. While you may be a fan and feel a connection, you don't know these people. You only see what they want you to see. In my career, I was very active in entertainment, marketing, and sponsorships. So I had the opportunity to meet and interact with many, many celebrities from sports, politics, music, movies, TV, and business. And what I tell people all the time, if you really, really like a celebrity, don't meet them. Because far more likely than not, you will be disappointed. You would be shocked to know that some of the celebrities with the nicest feel-good personas are despicable and mean-spirited jerks. So, since we really don't know these people, let's not get too caught up in their personal lives. By all means, we can be fans and enjoy their work, but just recognize we don't really know what's going on with them. Okay, let's get to today's truth. Today's truth. When we look at hot or popular social topics, the state of marriage is often in the top 10. There has been more attention on the subject as the marriage rate continues its 40-year decline and currently stands near the all-time low, which was reached in 2022. But what you may have missed is the divorce rate is actually at an all-time low. Yeah, fewer people are getting married, but more of them are staying married. So, in today's truth, I want to discuss divorce trends in the United States. There are some surprising and encouraging dynamics happening. Okay, let's first address the most popular yet misleading stat about marriage. 1 out of 2 marriages end in divorce. Okay, now, first of all, while the actual rate is lower than that, even if this were true, it's grossly misleading. And here's why. It doesn't at all address how long these marriages last. As an example, the captain and Tennille, were a pop duo who had a string of hits in the 1970s. But after 39 years of marriage, they divorced. Why? Well, there were several factors impacting the relationship, but one key factor was that Daryl Dragon, the captain, was suffering from kidney disease, and his treatment was compiling huge medical bills. But by divorcing him, Tony Tennille was no longer responsible for paying those bills. So this marriage counts in that 1 out of 2 end in divorce stat. But 39 years sounds like a strong marriage to me. Okay, let's look at some key trends. And most of the information is from the Pew Research Center. The U.S. divorce rate peaked in 1980 and has been declining ever since. And the decline has especially been steeper the past 15 years. So, what's behind the decline? Well, a big part of it requires taking a closer look at who it is that's getting married. Basically, there are fewer of the bad or doomed marriages taking place. So what do I mean by that? Come on, we've all seen some marriages where everyone knew it wouldn't last. Most of you have had at least one experience where you were sitting in church during the ceremony thinking, they ain't gonna make it. Some typical scenarios included teen marriages, often driven by unwanted pregnancy. Well, the teen pregnancy rate is also at an all-time low, so there are fewer incidences of this. Another factor regards education. The marriage rate has declined more steeply for people without a college degree. And historically, these people have had higher divorce rates than the more educated couples. Finally, people are getting married much later. In 1980, 33% of adults were married by age 21, and 66% were married by 24 years old. Now, more than 40 years later, those statistics have dropped to 6% and 22% respectively. Young adults are now prioritizing education and financial stability ahead of marriage. And getting married as mature adults lessens the likelihood of erratic or impulsive behavior of demands for divorce. Now, in episode 2 of The Ruthless Truth, I talked a lot about marriage, and one of the key points made was that for most of this country's history, women needed to get married, okay? As the country was institutionalized against single women. But now, women need only to get married because they want to. This dynamic is also reducing the number of potentially bad marriages. One exception to the declining divorce rate is for those 50 or older in age, often referred to as the gray divorce factor. Now, while every other age group has seen steady declines in divorce, the rate actually increased for this older group from 1990 to 2008, although it has since leveled off. One contributing factor is that people are living longer. And so you have many women who are unhappy in their marriage. They reach age 50 and think, do I really want to deal with this for another 30 plus years? Well, when the answer is no, they make a change and give themselves a new chance at happiness. And for people who do get married, how long are they married before divorcing? Well, there's an interesting split here. 40% of divorces occur in the first 9 years, with years 5 through 9 representing the most activity. Then from there, the rate declines for each year of marriage until you hit 25 years. Then there's a spike. Almost 25% of all divorces occur after 25 years of marriage. The most typical scenario is that one or both spouses are waiting for the kids to finish high school or college. Okay, now to the big question. Why do couples get divorced? You would think this would be an easy question to answer, but opinions actually vary on this. I always believed and heard that the number one factor was money. And if you listen to Dave Ramsey, he swears that that is the number one reason. But other researchers, including Pew Research, cite money problems as the fourth reason, preceded by lack of commitment, too much fighting and arguing, and infidelity. Okay? Now, we've discussed declining divorce rates, changes in marriage trends, and the reasons for divorce. So what does all this mean? What happens to people after divorce? Well, overall, divorce is still not good for just about anyone. Specifically, let's look at employment. Divorced men are less likely than married men to be employed, while the opposite is true for women. Relatedly, divorced adults have lower household income and wealth than married couples. Now, I know this is somewhat obvious, but it reinforces a point I often make. Rich people are married. In fact, 85% of all millionaires are married. Marriage is a cornerstone of building wealth. Now, this may be one of the reasons that 2/3 of Americans that have divorced go on to remarry, with this likelihood only slightly more so for men than women. And I guess once you've done something, it's easier the second time, because these remarried couples have a 90% higher likelihood of divorce than first marriages. Now, in discussing current divorce trends, I would be remiss to not address the, quote, divorce effect. You may not have heard of this, especially for my older listeners, but the divorce effect is a popular TikTok and social media trend highlighting the positive glow up and increased happiness people, especially women, experience after leaving toxic or unhappy marriages. These recently divorced people often post before and after photos illustrating the positive benefits of their divorce, often set to the song American Pie. Kind of arbitrary. Early responses to the trend show that the divorce effect is a powerful shared experience among people who have survived devastating breakups. The celebratory videos resonate with anyone who's ever forgotten that endings are just beginnings. Divorce effect videos are resonating with women on social media, with many social media users supporting each other in the comments. However, despite this positive spin, there is also no denying the adverse effects of divorce, especially on kids. Much of the following perspective was from researcher Nolan Pope. Okay, first, divorce significantly alters children's resources and living arrangements. Second, children of divorce have higher rates of behavioral and academic issues, anger management, and recreational drug use. Divorce, for the most part, is not good for kids. In addition, the research shows that these effects persist into adulthood, contributing to lower income, reduced college residency, higher incarceration, lower self-esteem, teen birth, and mortality rates. Lastly, given that divorce has negative effects on children's outcomes and is more prevalent among low-income families, addressing its aspects may be important for reducing the intergenerational transmission of disadvantage. So, to close, while fewer Americans are getting married, even fewer of married couples are divorcing. And while divorce is difficult on just about everyone involved, most people recover and move on, whether that means remarrying or simply enjoying being single. And it appears the best chance for avoiding divorce is on the front end. As best as you can, make sure you're getting married for the right reasons and to the right person in the first place. Okay, let's get to today's American History Fun Fact. Today's American History Fun Fact. Okay, in today's Fun Fact, we will look at the life of an American inventor who is regarded as the Black Edison. All right? Granville Taylor Woods was born April 23rd, 1856 in Columbus, Ohio, to a part Native American, part black mother and a black father. Granville attended school until age 10, but had to leave due to his family poverty, which meant he needed to work. And he worked in various railroad stations and blacksmithing jobs, and he then received his formal education later through night school and studying engineering. It wasn't until he made the big move to New York City in 1876 that Woods realized his potential and skill in electricity and engineering. He was a natural. In 1878, he accepted a position as an engineer above the Ironsides, which was a British steamship. The job placed him inside some of the most advanced mechanical environments of the era and carried him to ports across the globe. And within 2 years, Woods became chief engineer. When he returned to Ohio, he became an engineer with the Dayton and Southwestern Railroad in Ohio. He then moved to Cincinnati in 1880 and established his own business as an electrical engineer and inventor. In 1885, Woods patented an apparatus that was a combination of a telephone and a telegraph. The device, which he called telegraphony, would allow a telegraph station to send voice and telegraph messages through Morse code over a single wire. He sold the rights to this device to the American Bell Telephone Company. He then used the proceeds to go into business for himself as a full-time inventor. And then he reorganized his Cincinnati company as the Woods Electric Company. In 1887, Woods was preparing to make a claim that would reverberate through the highest corridors of American industry. The claim that he had devised a way for moving trains to communicate wirelessly. But Woods was a low-key kind of guy. He was an understated man, so there was no big, huge announcement. He just quietly put it forth in a filing with the U.S. Patent Office in 1887. However, the patent filing caught the attention of one key figure, Thomas Edison. And before I go any further, let me just say a few words about Thomas Edison. Despite his brilliance, and iconic status in history, Edison was not a good guy. He was petty, dishonest, a taskmaster, a ruthless businessman who claimed credit for others' work. He undermined Nikola Tesla, and he was even cruel to animals. So, to summarize, Edison was an awful person. Okay, back to Granville Woods. So when Edison learned of the patent, he investigated, and then he confirmed that Woods' invention was real and functional. However, he didn't regard it as a marvel, but as a challenge. So within weeks, Woods was sued by Edison's company. The lawsuit claimed the invention infringed on Edison's own work. Woods would spend years in court in direct contention with the nation's most formidable inventor, a struggle that would earn him the respect of the engineering community and eventually Edison himself. It would also earn him an uneasy sobriquet or nickname, the Black Edison. Now, after Woods won his case, Edison actually offered him a position at the Edison Company, which, not surprisingly, Woods declined. Woods was a man who spoke eloquently and dressed elegantly, often in all black. He would tell people he was born in Australia, a fact many biographers now believe he fabricated just to garner respect and disassociate himself from slavery in the United States. So through the late 1880s and 1890s, Woods remained independent and he invented prolifically, nearly 60 inventions in all. But alas, his legal issues persisted. Specifically in 1888, he was arrested and charged with libel after taking out an advertisement in a trade magazine warning against patronizing the American Engineering Company of New York City. This company had provided funds for Woods to market an invention, but a crucial component of the invention was missing from the deal, which the manager of the company, James Zerby, later stole. Now, Woods and Zerbe would eventually go to court over ownership of the invention, and Woods won. But Zerbe had already patented the design in Europe and collected $1 million as it was valued. Now, Woods eventually patented the invention in 1893 in the United States, and in 1901, he sold it to General Electric. And although he usually prevailed, the constant litigation drained his finances. Woods' courtroom success was itself notable. African Americans had only recently secured the constitutional right to even testify in federal courts, and Woods was mostly successful. But as to his personal life, in 1890, Granville Woods married Ava Woods. Her maiden name is unknown. However, the stress of the constant litigation took its toll on Granville, and by most accounts, he wasn't a real pleasant person to be around. Ava was granted a divorce just a year later. In the early 20th century, Woods continued to innovate, developing overhead conducting systems that allowed electric streetcars and trolleys to replace steam power. He also helped develop early safety control mechanisms, including what became known as the dead man switch. Unfortunately, Woods died penniless and without fame on January 30th, 1910, at 53, of a cerebral hemorrhage, which was a complication of smallpox. He was interred at St. Michael's Cemetery in Elmhurst, Queens, in an unmarked grave. Historian M.A. Harris helped raise funds, persuading several of the corporations that use Woods' inventions to donate money in order to purchase a headstone, which was erected at Woods' grave site in 1975. That's all I have for you today on The Ruthless Truth. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can follow me on Instagram at TruthDavis5. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Ruthless Truth. There's also a Facebook page, Ruthless Truth. And I encourage you to look at some of the past episodes. There are 51 in total that span a wide variety of topics, and I'm sure you'll find something of interest to you. Thank you so much again, and I will talk to all of you soon.